I felt so proud of myself. That feels so good. And I feel proud of making an aspect of my life easier because of the hard work that I didn't avoid. Because guess what? That wouldn't have become easier if I wasn't sweating in the gym practicing that.
Yep.
And I know this is a very small example, but my goodness, does it feel big for me?
Welcome to You Can Trust Yourself with Meg and Maggie. Nothing feels as good as listening to your own voice, and each week we have conversations to help you do just that. Get comfy, grab your favorite fun drink, and let's dive into this week's episode.
Hi, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of You Can Trust Yourself. We are gearing up for today's episode, and it's one that we probably haven't bopped around to this topic in a minute. So I'm actually very excited and looking forward to diving into this topic with you all, especially, which you'll find out here soon, I have more to contribute to this conversation than I have in the past. I am really looking forward to hearing Maggie be able to Maggie's going to take a little more of the lead today on the conversation because this is more of her expertise and where she knows a ton more about some of these concepts that we're going to be discussing. And I still have my experiences and I can't wait to share those too. So thank you for joining in today. We are happy that you are here with us and ready to learn more about how exercise and movement and really intentional movement in our lives can impact us on so many levels and not just the levels that I feel like we have been sold for a really long time. And so get ready for a very, honestly, I'm going to use the word expansive episode to expand your mind of what we've viewed exercise as to what it really can be and how it can look in our lives. So Maggie, I am ready to pass this microphone baton over to you, and you just where do you want to get us started today?
Oh my gosh, I'm so excited about this. And I love that you use the word expansive because exercise and intentionally challenging ourselves, right? We're really going to get into that today, is something that can help us build self-trust faster and arguably better than almost anything else, right? Because when you intentionally put yourself into a challenge, something you're unsure that you can do, and then you realize that you can do it, or with just a little bit more practice, you'd be able to do it, that creates such a sense of confidence and belief in ourselves that then really carries over into all of the other areas of our life. And so I'm really excited to talk about this. I love how I just talked about how I'm moving away from only talking about health and fitness. Now we're recording an episode about exercise.
You did
that is
in the last episode.
Most
perfect timing.
Maggie thing ever. But this is a perfect example of the fact that it never goes away. It is a part of everything. And I'm so excited to talk about it from this perspective and not necessarily from the weight loss perspective or any other physical perspective. Obviously, exercise has all those benefits and we love it for that. But I'm so excited to tie it into building self-trust. And I am so excited for you to share your newfound, insights with exercise, because you have taken recently a new approach to your own, fitness journey and how you are approaching exercise and what types of things that you are doing and when and all of that. And so I'm so excited to hear about that too, because you have shared some things with me not recording that have just made me so I'm jumping up and down. I'm yes, go Meg. And so I'm so excited to share that. So that way everybody listening can start to think about how they can have those realizations too. And so where I would like to start is more in the theory of doing hard things, right? So a conversation that you and I had recently, which really got us both fired up and we were we have to record this episode, is a combination of a couple things. First of all, why does it take us so long to make good choices, right? We know that doing things such as exercise is really good for us, and it just takes us so long to start implementing it. And along with that, we are so comfortable in our regular routines, right? And we have this association that doing hard things is bad, when in reality, doing hard things and challenging us is what sets us up the best to be able to take on all of the challenges of life, right? So I'd love to hear what you are thinking today about this idea of like shying away from hard things instead of jumping in and doing them.
I love that question, and I just want to say one quick thing before I answer that. It ties in though, so don't worry. I'm not taking us off totally, everybody. I tend to do that. I tend to take us down,
Sometimes we go on some detours.
Oh, I take us on a lot of detours. But today it's a quick one of just saying I'm really looking forward to diving into this of the hard things concept, because I'm hoping that our listeners and the trustees, you all listening here, is a rebranding of what exercise means in our lives and what it can look like in a different light and lens. And so I just had to say that, like, hearing you say that, I think in the past, I just picture myself doing the deepest of eye rolls of like, I don't want to exercise, so I don't want to listen to this podcast episode telling me to exercise because I already don't want to. And then I'm just going to feel shame that I'm not going to anyways, even after listening to this episode. Mm-hmm. So for any of my eye rollers listening, I feel you. I have been there. I still am there. There's still a minimal eye roll happening, even at my own self-talking. And I'm really excited for you to be able to listen to this more expansive conversation around what can exercise really look like for us. So back to the hard things topic. And Maggie, correct me if I'm wrong, but you're asking what it kind of looks like for me recently of how does that look in my life?
I would love to go there. Just anything that's really coming to mind for you around that, around the idea of like this resistance towards doing hard things, this resistance towards exercise, right?
Sure.
And when in reality, it's the best thing that we can do for ourselves.
I think in a lot of ways, it has made me feel, and it's interesting, my husband and I were watching White Lotus last night, which if any of you watch White Lotus, it's one of our favorite shows. And there was a scene that was talking about concepts similar to this, and it was with a scene of a Buddhist monk who was saying that a lot of our primal nature as humans in modern day society has been to move towards pleasure and away from pain. And that has become a really inundated concept in most of our lives. I mean, think about it. We really have become very habitually formed to move towards things that feel good and away from things that cause us pain. Now, when we take that from a broader perspective, that's probably not a bad thing, right? We don't want to necessarily put ourselves in harm's way or in situations that can be harmful to ourselves. And leaning into pleasure is one of my favorite things to talk about with clients and here on this podcast, of choosing joy and pleasure and things that feel good, right? That's a lot of the nature of self-trust, is finding what that looks like for us. And when it comes to exercise, I think that we sometimes let that spill over into our experience with exercise of it's hard, especially if you've never done it before and you don't have a foundational level of, what's the right word? Like stamina to endure exercise. You can be like, oh, fuck this. I don't know about this. This is too hard, right? And then we have this notion that like, oh, that was so hard. My muscles are so sore. I don't want to do that anymore, or I don't want to do that as often. And I have really found, as I'm rewriting my experience with exercise, the need for, no, the actual hard part and the pain part is actually strengthening a muscle within me, and actually literally my muscles. And I want to say this really quick story before I hand it back over to you, Maggie. Last night, this is the smallest of silliest examples, but I'm so excited to share it because it's such a big deal for me. Do you know when you drop something like under the bed or under the couch and you have that moment where you're like, oh, fuck, I got to get on my knees and get down here and look for it, and I got to hunch over, and I got to like, all of a sudden we all turn into like 97-year-olds who are like, oh God, I got to get under the bed and look for this thing. So my dog loses their toy last night, and I'm like, great, here we go, getting on my knees. And I go to get back up. And I think habitually and instinctively, I was like, oh God, this is going to be a whole thing. Got to hold on to something. Again, we turn into 97-year-olds, which God love the 97-year-olds out there. Like, no shame at you at all. And I shouldn't be functioning like a 97-year-old. So I go to get up, and all of a sudden, Maggie, I'm in like a lunged position, and I get up with ease. I got up with ease.
Yeah.
And for those of you who are listening, you're like, oh my God, like, wow, this is such a thing. No, wow, this is such a thing. Because for me, for so long, when we are not maintaining exercise and abilities, I don't think it matters how old you are or how physically fit you are. If we don't use those muscles and use our abilities, we can lose them or they become really challenging. So yesterday, noticing that I did not have difficulty of like, oh, let me grab the nightstand and push myself back up. And while I was getting up, I remembered being in my classes and doing repeated lunges over and over and over again. And I was like, that was easy because I've done so many lunges recently. And I think that sets us up for a lot of what we're about to talk about. So I hope you enjoyed that slight detour, if you will, because I think it sets the stage of that is an expansive way to view exercise besides the limited 2D flat version that we've been sold for so long of you work out to be thin, you work out to be blank, you work out so you can go on vacation and look great in your swimsuit. This takes it to a more expansive place of wellness that I can get on board with because the two-dimensional version didn't sell me enough to make it a priority in my life.
Yeah. How did you feel when you were getting up and it was easy?
I feel so proud of myself. I felt so proud of myself. And I envisioned myself doing the lunges in the mirror with the dumbbells that have gotten easier and easier. Not easy. I mean, now my coaches, I go to classes, everybody. So my coaches are really great. And they're like, hey, Meg, now that it's easier, here's heavier dumbbells. Yes. And then it gets hard and then it gets harder again. But I felt like, wow, that feels good. That feels so good. And I feel proud of making an aspect of my life easier because of the hard work that I didn't avoid. Because guess what? That wouldn't have become easier if I wasn't sweating in the gym practicing that.
Yep.
And I know this is a very small example, but my goodness, does it feel big for me?
No, this is the example. Every single other example is exactly the same as this. It could be at any scale, right? Any type of thing, any difficulty level, right? The difficulty level could be enhanced, but the example is the same. That feeling of, wow, I can do this is the same, right? And how does that compare to you, this feeling of like being so proud of yourself and feeling capable, right? Because you practiced this over and over. How does that compare to how you had felt previously in that situation?
I think in the past, if we stick with this example, it had contributed to this feeling of, oh, I'm so out of shape. Oh, forget it. I just like life just feels a little harder when you are not physically capable of handling the difficulties of it. And it can be something as simple as, you know, an example, the elevator went out at work or the other day. I'm on the fourth floor. You got to have some sort of stamina to get up that fourth floor. And had I not been in a season of consistently exercising, I probably would have had to stop halfway, right? 4 floors is no joke. And to do it with some difficulty and some challenge, but to still be able to do it enhances my self-trust of I'm collecting evidence that me practicing this in the gym is contributing to my self-trust within myself. And that also, I don't know if you want me to take it here, Maggie, but I'm going to draw a comparison to the mental health side because our episodes prior to this were related to like anxiety and managing our mental health components. And for those of you who are not OGs, Maggie and I started our podcast years ago on the basis of Maggie had expertise in the physical health nature from her schooling and her experiences. And I had the expertise on the mental side. And so our show has been like a culmination of that over the years. And so I like when we get to do a nod to that. But now it really ties into this self-trust of when we can sit with the distressing thoughts of our anxiety and realize that we came out the other side, and we can sit with the pain and the hardness of them and not avoid and not numb them out and not, try everything we can to go around the anxiety, and we actually sit with it, it builds this self-trust in us of, okay, I've done this before. I've survived this. And it can build this confidence and this self-trust that, well, maybe I can do it again. And you know what? Maybe next time I can actually go into that social group that I'm really, really scared to, or I can try it just for a minute. And it's making me think of the exercise of these little moments that are shaping that self-trust. But the thing is, we wouldn't get to them if we kept avoiding the hard things. And to bring it full circle, for a lot of the most amazing spiritual teachers in the world, and I'm thinking of it because of White Lotus and so much of the Buddhist culture that's in there, from so many of the stories that we know, a lot of resilience is built through doing difficult things, right? And so I think we are expanding in this conversation, Maggie. The expansiveness is all around us here, everybody.
I am like, my butt is wiggling in this seat. I'm so excited about this conversation because this is exactly what we do this for, right? This is why we do hard things. This is why we have to intentionally set ourselves up to have to practice these things. And I love how you said collect evidence, right? Because that's exactly what's going on. When you are doing lunges, right? And those lunges are freaking hard and then they get easier and then your coaches bring you heavier dumbbells and you're like, oh, I hate you, but I
Then
love
they
you.
put you on a
Thank you.
BOSU to do them.
Yeah. And like, you're like, what the heck? Like, why? This is awful. And every single time those lunges get harder, you're like, this is awful. Why am I doing this? Right. But then you get up off the floor easily. And that moment changes the way you view yourself. That moment changes how you feel about yourself. It changes what you believe that you're capable of. It doesn't just change the fact that you now believe you can get up off the floor. It changes, like you said, oh, well, maybe I have a little more confidence to go to introduce myself to someone new. Maybe I could go try a new class. Maybe I could go join pickleball camp. Maybe I could go do any of these things that maybe you have felt held back from doing because of some other limiting belief, some other resistance, right? And it's not that exercise only helps you build self-trust and confidence and belief in yourself in the world of exercise. It carries over into the entire rest of your life, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's the same with all other things. This is why there is nothing that is more uncomfortable. That's not true. There are things that are more uncomfortable, but cold, like ice baths, cold shower, so uncomfortable, right? I'm in there, that cold water's hitting my back, and I'm like, oh my God, I can't breathe. Like, this is the worst thing that I've ever done in my life. And as soon as I turn that shower off, I'm like, I am unstoppable. I can do anything. And then that carries over into the rest of your day. That carries over into your workout. Your workout carries over into the shower when the cold water is hitting your back. Your workout, the confidence you get from that carries over into being able to help your dog get the toy from under the couch or be able to pitch yourself for some opportunity that you want, that you previously thought was out of reach, right? And this is the power of exercise. And this is the power of intentionally putting yourself in situations that are hard so that way you can then practice and collect evidence and get better and change the way that you feel about yourself, right? And so whether a lunge seems simple or not is irrelevant because this is what is happening on the other side of the lunge, right? And it's about starting where you are at and taking those challenges where you are and then progressing so that way we can continuously get better, right? But when we avoid doing hard things, and exercise is one of the things that we avoid the most, it's really freaking hard and we sweat and get hot and it takes some time and you have to go somewhere. Like, it's like so inconvenient, right? It can be really inconvenient. When we avoid doing that, we're robbing ourselves of the opportunity to trust ourselves. We're robbing ourselves of the opportunity to feel confident and to believe that we are capable of doing things that are challenging. Yes. And yes, you're robbing yourself the opportunity of building muscle and, protecting your bone density and improving your cardiovascular health and making sure that you can run around in the yard with your kids. Yeah, you're robbing yourself of all of that too, but that's not it. That's not the only thing. Right. And that's why I really wanted to have this conversation. And when you brought it up, I got fired up and I'm fired up again because this is the power of what happens on the other side of doing hard things. And exercise is one of the most powerful ways we can do that because you are setting yourself up to do something hard in a controlled environment. right? There's not a lot of risk associated with exercise, especially if you are going to like a class, right? Or you're doing it in a way that is not pushing yourself to your absolute limit. That's one of the coolest things about exercise, is that you don't have to push yourself to the breaking point to get the results that are intended, right? Like, you're not lifting dumbbells that are barely possible to lift. Like, how heavy are the latest dumbbells you're doing your lunges with?
Probably about 20 pounds each.
Yeah, and that feels terrible every time you do the lunges, but it's possible, right? You're in a controlled environment with a challenge that is very possible to do. And if it becomes impossible, you drop the dumbbells, right? Like, there's not a lot of risk associated here. And so that is so beautiful, because you're not putting yourself in a life or death situation, and you're getting all the benefits of doing something hard and getting better from it.
Yes. I really connect so much to this topic, hence the episode that we're doing of us feeling passionately about it. But I connect so much to this topic because so often, unfortunately, we find that there's a lot of talk about resiliency in the residuals of trauma, or in the residuals of things happening to us that shouldn't have, or in unfortunate circumstances, right? That's where a lot of times we hear about resiliency. And what you're saying, and if I hear you correct, Maggie, you're saying, and I know that I'm the new one in the peanut gallery listening because I wasn't always there with my ears open, but you're saying we have an opportunity here to purposely build this resiliency and self-trust in an environment that we don't have to experience something terrible. We don't have to. Well, hold on. Let me take that back. Because some days when I show up to my class and I go to Orange Theory, sometimes we call it a Mount Everest day, where it's like you're on the treadmill and it's, that may be terrible. However, it is something that is not harming me. And if it ever felt like it was too much, I listen to my body and have that self-trust to know that I take it down a notch. And I really love this episode because it is accessible for almost everybody in some form, if not everybody in some form, right? I understand that there are different levels of what we can do. However, I would argue that for most people, there is something we can be doing to enhance this self-trust through exercise. And that accessibility is something that's really a value of mine. Of right now, we are prioritizing putting our money towards a class like Orange Theory, which is not cheap. I'm sorry, like, it is not a cheap class. However, right now in this season of life, that is where we're choosing to put some more of our money, instead of probably like a savings as it should be. But, besides the point.
Should it be, though? Funny. Is your savings building self-trust? Just saying. I'm just saying.
I love it. Just saying. Of like, this is where it is. However, also this can be done for free. Challenging yourself on a walk outside. Challenging yourself to go a quarter of the way up the hill one day. And then next time you're like, you know what? I'm going to go a little bit above a quarter. And then, you know what? I'm going halfway up that hill today. And building that trust. And I think the part that I keep hearing you say, Maggie, like the overall theme is like, there is something so beyond powerful and necessary as a human being to feel capable in life. And if we have this tool that can remotely be free to help us do that, why have we all not been doing that faster? And I really asked myself that. And I think in a lot of ways, it's because I hadn't really heard an expansive conversation like this. I had really only heard of exercise through the lens of the health and fitness world, of like, oh yeah, this is just good for us and we got to do it and da-da-da. And I kind of hate to admit that like it fell short for me, because it shouldn't have really, like it probably should have hit home sooner, and it didn't. And it's because there wasn't enough buy-in for me. Whereas if somebody said, this is enhancing your ability to believe in yourself and your mental health, and we haven't even gone over all the benefits that it can contribute to your mental health, of I notice a tremendous difference in my ability to serve clients now as a counselor in training when I exercise consistently and when I don't. And unfortunately, I'm going to say unfortunately very candidly, unfortunately, it took my clients and serving clients for me to say, oh, this is a necessity. And that's a concept that I think might be worth spending just a moment with, Maggie, of the concept of why sometimes it takes outside forces to get us to do things that are well intentioned for ourselves. I think of this example a lot of times when it comes to, I work a lot of times with women like postpartum, perinatal, like around the time of being pregnant and giving birth. And there is something very interesting that happens a lot of times, is that certain decisions that we start to make as women in particular are now easier to make when somebody else's life is attached to them, right? We try to a lot of times clean up our diet or do things that are for wellness when there is now a baby attached to that. Or for others who, they get a medical diagnosis and now it's pushed upon us. It's like we kind of, I think it's sometimes this concept that I don't know exactly what it is, and I'm curious to hear your thoughts on it, Maggie. These are truly just like my internal thoughts of wondering of like, sometimes I'm like, is it a worthiness thing? Like we don't feel worthy as human beings to feel capable or to feel like we don't feel like we deserve to feel strong and powerful. Therefore, we don't try. And again, I did not think any of this through. These are just my like true transparent thoughts around this topic. But it does make me wonder, for any of you listening, please comment, come talk to us about this on social media of what do you think it is that keeps so many of us from including exercise in our lives for so long and not consistently for such an extended period of time when we know there's so many benefits.
I think if we could solve this, we would just like save the whole world. Truthfully. I also don't know the answer, but I certainly have thoughts around it. Because for me personally, and as a coach, right, I've experienced this myself. I've had a lot of other people experience this like inability to take action when it's only for us, right? And I do definitely think it does come down, not only, but it partially for sure comes down to some sort of worthiness, um like lack of self-worth, right? Because I know for me, when I'm struggling to exercise consistently, there is some sort of messaging going on inside my brain that is, it's not what I'm actually hearing, because what I'm actually hearing is I don't have enough time, or this is going to be too hard, or I'm too tired, or like something like that. Like that's what's actually happening in my brain when I'm struggling to exercise consistently. But what do those things mean, right? When I say I don't have enough time, okay, well, I don't have enough time to make myself feel more confident. I don't have enough time to become a more resilient, capable version of myself. I don't have enough time to practice a challenge I am for sure going to face in the real world to get better at it when I actually have to face it. Like, but I don't know if it's we're not thinking about those things, like we're not making that connection, or if we really think that, oh, well, either maybe it doesn't really matter, or kind of like a what's the point? You said that before. You mentioned like a before you started going to Orange Theory and like getting up off the floor, you felt like like what is the point of even trying? Like, this is just going to be hard no matter what. And I think it's easy to kind of get stuck in that thought pattern and not realize that we have the ability to influence our lives and influence these things and make changes, right? And so I definitely think that that's a component of it. I think that there's a lot more too, because we are also trained to like be super efficient all the time, right? And we're thinking, well, if I'm not working or producing some sort of value in this moment, then whatever other action I'm going to take is not good enough. And so I'll think that sometimes of like, I have work to do and I need to do a workout. And so my thought process is like, well, the workout's not going to get the work done right now, so I should do the work, when in reality, I should do the workout because it's going to make me do the work better now and in the future. right? And so I think that there's a lot of things at play here, but I really want to get your perspective on those thoughts that we're thinking, the like, I don't have enough time, I'm too tired, whatever, and what that might be connected to on a deeper level.
Yeah, it is such a good question for me to even like, I feel the need to like sit with myself for a minute and like be with that. So for those of you who are listening, who are probably, you know, a lot of times podcasts, we're listening to it on a walk or in the car or whatever it may be, like maybe, you know, pause here for a second and come back to the rest later of thinking, well, not that you don't have to listen to the rest of the episode, but maybe put a pause on asking yourselves that too, because obviously the point of our show is to interact with you all and wonder what that means for you. And so as I hear you ask that question, Maggie, those thoughts on a deeper level, I think a lot of times they can come from many places, right? But I think it's always really important. I am someone who really likes to think of like, what are the societal influences? Because those are more like unconscious and seeped into us, right? The things that we don't really think about, because as humans and the way that our brains work, we don't have the capacity to always be in these deep states all the time, right? We pop into these deep states when we listen to a podcast or we read a book or we are consuming content around self-growth and development. However, we couldn't live in that place all of the time. We would be exhausted, right? Because it takes energy and mental energy to think about changing and evolving and growing and habits and all the things, which means that most of the time that leaves room for kind of like residual habits that are already kind of put in place. So thoughts like that, I always like to think of the societal pieces of like what's impacting me or my clients or those of you listening, the trustees, what's impacting us societally. And Maggie, you already kind of touched on it of a lot. A lot is impacting us societally, right? It's a lot of times we are such, especially here in the States, we are so tied to our productivity as our worthiness. So if you think about that, I was thinking about this the other day when I went to a workout. By the time I drive to the workout, do the workout, complete the workout, shower from the workout, and get myself ready, I'd say it's probably at least a 2-hour process.
Mm-hmm.
And that is, now let's times that by 5 days a week. That's now 10 hours a week that I'm spending towards movement and intentional exercise, which, by the way, everybody, I don't go 5 times a week. 2, 3, 4 is like my vibes. I'll get to 5 maybe one day. But when we think about that for a second of like how much time that can take, it's so easy and honestly natural to be like, I don't have time for that, right? And there has to be some sort of a reframe that we have of, if we don't make time for it, it's going to spill into affecting our lives. So for example, since we have you here in this deeper level because you are listening to a podcast, let me unpack it here for you of when we think about that, of I don't have the time for it, it can kind of create this really easy habit that I fall into all the time of, well, instead of doing that for 2 hours, I could be seeing 2 more clients, right? I could pick up 2 more clients on my schedule. But here's the thing. I can't serve those clients as well as I could if I didn't take those 2 hours for myself every single day. And I can't show up and be who I want to be in different aspects of my life without, oh, sorry everybody, my smoke alarm's going off. I'm going to give us a second. Nobody worry, it's just my husband making lunch and the smoke alarm went off and my dogs hate it. Anyways,
oh my gosh.
real life happening over here, okay? Speaking of health and wellness, we're trying to do all the things. He's prepping some vegetables for us. It is something that, as we kind of unpack that, it has to be a constant pro, con, cost, benefit. I feel like I'm constantly having those thoughts in my head, Maggie. And when it comes to exercise, I'm consistently collecting evidence these days that most of the time it's exactly what I need, that intentional exercise and movement to be able to show up the way that I want to show up in the other areas. And one thing that I'll say, going along with the societal part, is I'm learning that I don't want my legacy, identity, whatever you want to call it, to be tied to how productive I was right? And I know that that's a deeper thought, but you asked for my deeper thoughts, so it's kind of perfect. Of it all comes down to what do we really want? And I talk about this a lot of times with clients too, of what do you want to remember yourself as? How do you want your spouse to remember you, your family, your loved ones, your children? Like, I have seen hardworking people in my life, and I admire the heck out of them in so many ways. And I really admire people who took really good care of themselves and were able to show up more regulated, were able to have more patience, were able to feel capable and confident and had a level of self-trust. And I now have switched my mindset of thinking like, I think those people were onto something. And I know that exercise is not the only way that contributes to that, but man, oh man, is it a big part of it? Is it a huge part of it to know that that time is invaluable based on the person I want to be? So let me ask you all this. If you want to be the person who has the legacy of I worked really, really, really hard and just like crushed it at work and had very little space left for myself, my emotions, my family, my friends, whatever it may be, keep doing what you're doing, right? There's nothing, who am I? We all are here to do different things, right? And the intentionality of my life, I'm learning now, is very tied to exercise because it is a huge realm of self-care, of literally taking care of my being. It literally takes care of my being. It helps my being to be strong and capable and be able to, now nobody hear me wrong, I am not like a fitness person, by the way. Like I'm not out here doing, crazy fitness type things. Although I did sign up for a dry try, a half one at my class, and I'm very excited about it, everybody.
Wow.
Yeah, we'll talk about that maybe eventually of when we get into the second part of this episode. Stay tuned for part 2 of what is this actually looking like in Meg and Maggie's life right now for you to hopefully steal some ideas and, get going with it. But that reframe really has to happen first. And it really had to happen for me because the old mentality, if you will, or branding of exercise wasn't penetrating quite for me. But when we put it in the words of who do you want to be? How do you want to show up as? How do you want to be able to move, literally move through this world? Do you want to struggle to get things from under the bed? Or do you want to be able to run after your children or get down on the floor with your dog or insert every example ever?
Mm-hmm.
Right? Do you want to be able to walk around Disney World and be able to sustain it? Because let me tell you, those are really hard, long days of walking.
Yeah, absolutely.
So
I there's two things that I want to talk about before we move into the tangible tips about this. The first thing is going off of what you were just saying is that even if you are the person who wants to dedicate your life to work, you will be better at it if you exercise. That's it. That's the whole statement. Like you will, whatever it is that you are committed to doing in your life at any level, you will be better at it if you take time to exercise and practice being in challenging situations and get stronger and all of that, right? So you can make the taking care of yourself part a lot bigger, a lot smaller, whatever you want. For you, Meg, what I'm hearing you say is that is going to be a bigger part of your life, right? I know that there are people listening who are like, what's the bare minimum that I need to do to get the rest of my shit done? And that's totally fine too, right? If you want to take that approach, but it has to be part of it. Otherwise, you will burn out, right? And you will not be setting yourself up for success. And the second thing that kind of goes along with that is I'm going to pair together two topics that are probably the most uncomfortable for you listening, especially if you are a younger woman like us. Exercise and finances. Let's talk about both of them together, okay? Because exercise and improving our health is an investment, right? And I've been learning a lot about investments recently. And the way that investing works with your money is the more frequent deposits you make, the more money you're going to end up with at the end, right? So whenever that end is for you, retirement, if you make more frequent deposits, even if they're smaller, that will compound, right? So the interest will be making you more and more and more money. The more frequently you put money into your investments, the more money you're going to end up with on the other side. And exercise is exactly the same way. The more frequently you practice exercising, the more frequently you do a workout, even if it's imperfect, even if it's really short, right? A little bit of duration, the better results you're going to get at the end. It compounds. It's not something that you can just say, I'm going to put $10,000 into my savings account and then magically I'm going to have $1 million by the time I retire. We can't just say, I'm going to do one really good workout today and I'm going to be healthy for the rest of my life. It's not how it works, right? It's a game of compounding interest. And so what I want to leave you with this like conceptual side of building self-trust through exercise is that it's about consistency, and it's about taking small actions all the time that build up into the win, right? That's how we get better at getting up off the floor, getting the toys out from under the couch, whatever your challenge of the day is. That's how we get better at it, right? So I don't want you to listen to this and say, I'm going to go crush a 2-hour workout right now and then not exercise for 2 weeks, right? It's like, okay, how can I go for a walk? How can I do a circuit? How can I do whatever, a little yoga this morning or before bed or whatever, right? It's the compounding interest game that we want to play that is going to help us build our self-trust the most.
I am so happy you gave that example, because as we transition into part 2 of this episode, so everybody stay tuned for next week. We are going to be diving right on into part 2. I have so many thoughts around this and tangible things for our listeners to take away, and things that are manageable and doable, because if it's not manageable and doable, I'm probably not doing
it. Yes, absolutely. Honestly, same. Like, I set bigger goals sometimes for myself, fitness related, like I'll sign up for a half marathon or something. I haven't done that in a couple of years, but that's exactly the point, is that I haven't done that in a couple of years. Like, that's like a one-off type of thing. You know what I mean? I'm not doing that 24/7. And so I am very excited to get into that. And I hope that you took away at least just 1 or 2 little nuggets to chew on in your mind about exercise, and maybe a new perspective of the benefits of it for you. Because yes, we love looking great and feeling our best and blah, 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 blah. But how can we feel more capable, increase our confidence, right? Build our self-trust. Those are things that we get when we exercise.
All right. We'll see you next week and talk more about that.
Thank you for joining us on another episode of You Can Trust Yourself with Meg and Maggie. Our mission is to leave you with encouragement and tools to nurture your ability to trust yourself. If you found this episode valuable, don't forget to subscribe and please share it with a friend. Then take a moment to leave us a 5-star rating and review. Your support helps our show grow, and for that, we are extremely grateful. Follow us on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel where you can watch the episodes. Till next week, lots of trust and love, Meg and Maggie.